success and growth of generations past, a birthright being squandered by corruption in Albany, and the depredations of an insecure, scheming mountebank posing as governor who loathes both us and himself. As liberty beckoned to enslaved peoples behind the Iron Curtain via American broadcasts after World War II, we now say, believe, rise, and join us. Welcome to Radio Free New York.
All right, everybody. Welcome to Radio Free New York. I'm your host, Andrew Hollister, and I am here in studio with Bob Savage.
Hello, all. Welcome to Monday.
Yep, welcome to Monday.
Lots of sunshine, but every indication we have is that all this mild weather that we've had, kind of like a little wimpy snowfall here and there, and then it gets sunny again, then it gets to be 40 degrees. You can forget that.
Yeah,
starting next week.
Is it going to get warm? Is that what's going to happen? Or is it gonna get really cold?
No.
Oh, man, I was kind of hoping for some warmth.
Yeah, me too. See, because I'm the heavy here. You're the host of the show, so I'm the one that gets to deliver the bad news.
There you go.
But we're talking the major snowstorm probably this weekend. They're talking about in single digits.
Oh, okay. I kind of like snowstorms. I don't know why. I like the anticipation that a snowstorm is rolling in for whatever reason. Maybe it's just it happens a couple times a year. So, and I don't know. But I do look forward to that, thinking about how much snow are we going to get? Can we break a record? I know most people are thinking the exact opposite. They're like, nope, I could live totally without the snow. If it doesn't snow, that's great. But for whatever reason, I like snowstorms. I like thunderstorms too. So
I love thunderstorms.
Yeah.
I love them. But this time, now here's the thing. You heard about this on Radio Free New York, so now you can go out and you can go to the grocery store and get all the stuff you want, the bottled water and the things that you would want for a snowstorm. You get it now without having to wait in line.
There you go. Yeah, before everybody's running to grab batteries and bottled water. And what happened last time? People rushed to the store for, was it milk and bread?
That's what they always do, milk and bread, yeah.
Perishables.
Right. Yep.
Maybe we'll do a segment sometime on how to better prepare for a winter snowstorm, and it won't include bread and milk.
How to be a snowstorm prepper with Andrew C. Hollister.
There you go. Yep. So the first thing I want to do before we dive right into the show here is I want to encourage you guys to give us a call. Call into the show. We're going to talk about some interesting things today, and I'd like to get your guys' perspective on what's happening. So call in with a comment, call in with a question. The number here at the studio is 585-346-3000. So that's 585-346-3000. Just jot the number down. And when something comes up that you want to give us some feedback on, just ring into the studios because I would like to hear your feedback. And the first topic I want to talk about, interestingly enough, the previous show discussed just a little bit. You kind of glazed over it. And that's the idea that Cuomo wants to ban plastic bags here in New York.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, he's serious about it.
Yep. So he's serious about it. And to me, I kind of chuckled a little bit when I saw it because the first thing I thought of is, man, we're always trying to compete with California. They banned plastic straws. So now we're like, oh, we're going to one up you. Let's ban plastic bags.
Didn't they do plastic bags out there too?
They might have. I don't know. I don't track what California does too often. But
I know my phone in the studio again as usual, so I'll get it during the break.
Yeah, during the break we'll check it out.
See if California has banned grocery bags. I know they were talking about it.
Yeah. So the thing that was interesting about this is this isn't the first time that Cuomo's tried to ban plastics bags. And before we go into this, I want to talk about, me personally. I'm environmentally conscious. I recycle things that a lot of people don't recycle anymore. I actually sort my paper and recycle paper. I recycle cardboard. I go through, I sort out the plastics and the glass and make sure they all go to the right place. And this is just, environmental stewardship. It makes me feel good knowing that I'm preserving the area that I live in. So I do that sort of thing. Probably not so little known fact, I drive a Prius. Ironically, had nothing to do with the environment at all, had everything to do with gas savings. And if you look into it, a lot of times people say the batteries created for a Prius and other hybrids actually do more damage to the environment than they save. So that's something that we're going to talk about a little bit. But some other things I do, I compost, which I feel is like a lost art nowadays. Very few people compost. And when I meet people my age specifically, they don't even really know what it is. And then they're surprised that you can do that. They're like, is there a law against this? Can you do that? Can you, collect stuff and make dirt out of it is basically what happens. So I want to start this off with the environment's important to me. I'm a hunter. I'm an outdoorsman. But I don't think this is going to do anything. And I want to get into the science on that a little bit because Wegmans, who clearly, by the way, has a stake in this, right? Because if plastic bans are
plastic bags are banned.
Yeah, there we go. Thank you so much. If they're banned, that may or may not cost Wegmans business, money, who knows what, right? So they clearly have a stake in this.
There's an industry association that's adamantly against banning the bags. By the way.
Yes. And so Wegmans, they released a statement last time, which I remembered. So I went back and I looked at it. I'm just going to share this with you guys and then talk about it. So the statement goes here it is. So it has long been Wegmans' position that unintended consequences come from banning anything. And then they add in that a statewide plastic ban would likely lead to an increase in the use of other paper bags, which is not what's best for the environment.
Except Robert F. Kennedy Jr., Mr. River... What is it? River something or other? I'm blanking on it. It's like River Champion or something. Anyway, it's about the Hudson. He wants to tax paper bags.
Oh, interesting.
So if we're going to ban the plastic and then RFK Jr. wants to tax, how are we supposed to get groceries home?
Oh, interesting.
Federal Express them? I mean,
that might make probably not many people happy. Now that I think about it, I mean, it would be kind of cool. I know
River Keeper. That's what it was.
River Keeper. There you go. Yeah. Yeah. Interesting. So he wants to tax paper bags. Why? Was there like a
to create a program, a government program?
For a program, of course, to make government bigger.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, now that makes sense. Yeah. So they say paper bags, which is not best for the environment. And then they go on to say paper bags are heavier, take up more space, and that it takes 7 tractor trailers to transport the same number of paper bags as plastic bags carried by 1 tractor trailer. It also takes about 90% more resources and energy to make and recycle paper compared to plastic.
I don't think you cut down trees for plastic bags either.
No. So I saw this statement from Wegmans, and I was like, I want to check this out. I want to look into this because that's an interesting statement. And I love the fact that they bring up unintended consequences, because this is something I talk about all the time, especially when we decide for some reason that we need to expand government or create some new program or some new law. So according to Wegmans, with the statement, banning plastic bags is actually more harmful to the environment. And if we want to look at alternatives to these plastic bags, you're looking at paper bags, cotton bags, or the long-term reusable plastic bags. Although in the article I saw from Cuomo, it didn't seem to be clear if you could even use those. So I went and I did some research, and I found this study very recently produced from Denmark, which Denmark a lot of times is kind of like renowned as like the green place. They've got their hand on renewables and stuff like that. So I found this study produced in 2018, so last year, which is great. Normally I find a study is like years old, and I feel bad even like reading it because I don't know if there's something better. It's produced by the Ministry of Environment and Food of Denmark. They broke everything down. I mean, they broke down the materials used in construction and the procurement of those materials. They broke down the transportation of it, what it costs as far as energy, greenhouse gases, everything to manufacture it. Then the transport to the actual place where these products are distributed. It is very, very comprehensive. And here's what they found. So if you were to take one of the normal plastic bags that you use in the grocery store and replace it with, and they did a whole bunch of bags, but I took these top 5 common ones. So one being a paper bag, one being a woven plastic bag, one being a non-woven plastic bag, one being a just regular cotton bag, and the other being the organic cotton bags, because that's a big deal to people. Some people they like that.
Not sure I know the difference. But.
Yeah. I guess it's the process that they follow to create these bags. Mm-hmm. So what I'm gonna do here is tell you one plastic bag and how many times you have to use these other bags to make the just break even equivalent of going green, greenhouse natural gas, all of that. So when we come back from the break, we're going to break this down, these 5, and how many times you'd have to use it to make this effective whatsoever at all. We'll be back here in a moment on Radio Free New York.
We'll treat you like family at Mark's Pizzeria. We'll treat you like family at Mark's Pizzeria. Great pizza, fresh and good.
This is Dom Genova, owner of Genesee Valley Motors in Avon, your no-nonsense car dealer. Well, we're your no-nonsense truck dealer, too, selling Rams and Fords up to the mightiest that they make. And we have a shop with Master Techs open from 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. 6 days a week, even Saturday, so you can get serviced when it's not billing hours for you. You may not be used to that. Visit RochesterWorkTrucks.com. That's RochesterWorkTrucks.com.
You're listening to Radio Free New York on the WYSL stations.
All right, so welcome back to Radio Free New York. I'm Andrew Hollister, your host of the show, in studio with Bob Savage. And I want to welcome everybody on YouTube, Twitter, Periscope, Facebook as well. Thank you guys so much for joining us. I can see in the numbers and the analytics that more and more of you guys are watching. You guys are jumping on the YouTube channel as well. Thank you for that. Our numbers are starting to skyrocket. So I really appreciate that. Please continue to share this with your friends. Let's keep spreading this information. So before the break, we started the process of just talking about plastic bags. Cuomo wants to ban plastic bags in New York. And from an environmental perspective, that actually sounds appealing to a lot of people. A lot of people hear that and go, yeah, plastic's bad, gets in the environment. Plastic bags specifically, when they break down, if they're not disposed of properly, can, dissolve into different toxins in the soil. Like, it sounds appealing to a lot of people. And it's just, like, yeah, why wouldn't we do that?
I think it's because people drive along, especially like in the springtime when all the snow melts and there's not much vegetation. So they see plastic bags up against fences.
Yeah.
So everybody goes, oh, that's so ugly, which is true. But I mean, it's not as bad as you think it is.
Yeah. And I read one article that, was clearly, we talked about the idea of articles being written as analysis, but actually being opinion and emotion. And I read a few articles because I did a really basic Google search. Are plastic bags bad for the environment? Should they be banned? And just article after article of, yeah, they're terrible. We shouldn't have them. There's all these great alternatives. They're natural, like cotton. And a lot of stuff was written from just emotion and what people maybe thought, but there wasn't any like science backing it. So I wanted to go and I wanted to find it and I wanted to share it with you guys. So I found this article, or not this article, this study done by the Ministry of Environment and Food of Denmark last year, 2018. So for you to take one plastic grocery store bag and replace it with a paper bag to equal the same amount of disruption to the environment, just to break even, you have to use that paper bag 43 times. So 43 times is how many times you have to make up using this paper bag. The reason for that is the process that goes into creating the paper bags. They're heavier, they're more difficult to transport. So you're using more fuel, you're using different energy, like all this stuff. So you need to use a paper bag 43 times. Now, I've used paper bags growing up. When I grew up, I had a brown paper lunch bag. And man, if I could get 43 uses out of a brown paper bag, I don't know if that's possible.
I remember a friend of mine in school, he showed me this note his mom put in his paper bag. He had the brown bag lunch. And the note said, "Bring the bag back tonight or no lunch tomorrow."
There you go. Yeah. And
this parent was a little on the cheap side.
There you go. But even from like the perspective of like, if you really wanted to make an impact, I just can't imagine a paper bag making it through 43 trips to Wegmans or Aldi's or wherever. That seems like that would have to be a really, really durable paper bag. So the next bag type that they looked at plastic bags, and they actually split out the difference between woven plastic bags and non-woven. And I didn't even really think about that at the time, that they would have, different costs, different environmental impacts. So if you have one of the woven ones, which are the nice ones, I've seen them, you look at them, it's like, wow, that looks like a really nice reusable grocery bag. 52 times. You had to use that bag 52 times.
Don't you use those like indefinitely though?
Well, so
of course you have to keep them clein and you have to store them. And
in my case, you actually have to remember to bring them to the store.
Yeah.
So that's, that's the thing I would say I am most guilty of, is if I do go to the store, many times I would forget the reusable bag. So the idea is that these are indefinite, that they should last, but you have to use it 52 times before you match the environmental impact of just one plastic paper bag.
Aren't they like $3 or $4 each to buy too?
Yeah, they started kind of cheap, like $1, but now I think they're becoming like a cool item. They've got them different colors, different designs.
Yeah, you get the virtue signal with them when you're going to.
Yeah.
But I just want to point out here that if everybody is required to use reusable bags going to the grocery store, the virtue signaling aspect of it is going to go away. Just saying.
Oh, yeah.
Because everybody's doing it. So you can't look down your nose at people and say, "Yeah, in your plastic bags. Yeah. Look at my woven vinyl one."
Yeah, exactly. So the non-woven ones are actually a little less. You can, once you use it 45 times, then you've done this. So the reason I'm bringing this up is because I see people, they get these bags and they use them 3 or 4 times and think that now it's okay, they've made their environmental impact, they've done good for the planet. No. You got to use it 43 times. Then from that point moving forward, you've started to create a positive environmental impact.
Slap some duct tape on that.
Yep. Keep it going. Yep. Cotton bags is where my eyes just opened right up. Like, you want to talk about being surprised. I never really knew that it was going to be this high. So if you just take a regular cotton bag that's meant for, reusable grocery bag, you have to use it 7,100 times. 7,100 times before you start making a positive impact on the environment.
Wow.
Yeah.
I wonder why that is.
Whatever the process is, the impact on the environment, between transport, however they have to treat it, whatever, 7,100 times. Now,
so many liberals I know would say, "Well, that's okay. I'll just buy cotton bags that are made in India."
There you go. Yep.
Folks, there's only one biosphere. There's only one environment. So anything that happens in India or China affects us, right? I mean,
absolutely.
we're all in this together, this is the asininity, if you will, of all of this stuff. Because unless everybody's doing the same thing on the globe.
Yep. Yeah, and people could argue. I mean, you could argue that if 1% of the population became environmentally aware, it would still have some impact. And I don't disagree with that.
Well, Robert Kennedy Jr., Mr. Riverkeeper, is going to be flying around in his G6 to go to environmental conferences. So that kind of negates all the plastic bag legislation.
Exactly. So the thing that I found really interesting was organic cotton bags. So when you think organic, you think less chemicals, you think more environmentally friendly practices, like the whole everything. If you get an organic made cotton bag, you have to use that. They basically couldn't even come up with an exact number. So they said a minimum of 20,000 times you would have to use an organic cotton bag to then start having a positive impact on the environment versus using a plastic bag. So and then they the study went on, and this is like brilliant. Like, these people really care about this. You could tell by the study, this is just the executive summary, that they really, really care about the environment, and they wanted people to know. They said, now all these numbers, the 43 for a paper bag, 52 for a plastic woven, 45 for a non-woven, 7,100 times for cotton and 20,000 times for cotton organic. That's assuming that you only ever use that plastic bag once and then throw it away. You don't even recycle it. If you use it twice, and the example they gave is groceries, then garbage bag. Because a lot of people, whether it's for their bathroom garbage or under the sink garbage, they'll use like a Wegmans bag or a grocery store bag as garbage. And then that will be their garbage bag. It almost triples those numbers because now it's been used twice and it's been recycled, or you can take it to the grocery store and recycle it. So these numbers are assuming the absolute worst stewardship of your grocery store bag. So I thought that was crazy. And then I started thinking, and this is just kind of how my mind goes and where my mind goes. I started thinking, well, how many times does the average American go to the grocery store? For how long do you have to use these bags to start having a positive environmental impact? So what did I do? I ran those numbers too. I found Statistica.com has stats on like all of this stuff for like the last 10 years. And they found that the average American goes to a grocery store 83 times a year, 1.6 times a week. So naturally, I just did a little math, and I'll share this with you guys in case you care. Maybe you don't, but I found it interesting. You would have to use that brown paper bag on every grocery trip you make for the next 6.2 months. And then after that, you'd start having a positive environmental impact after 6.2 months, only if you use that same one brown paper bag.
Does it have to be recycled in a certain way?
I think that for cotton, they suggested incineration.
Not New York State. You can't do that. You can't burn anything in New York.
Yep.
The DEC will come put you in the back of a squad car.
Oh, yeah. Paper bags and plastic bags, they suggested your final use should be as a garbage bag. But for cotton, for whatever reason, they said that you shouldn't do that.
Wait, you said the vinyl, the woven plastic, and then the straight plastic bags. I assume this is when you say these are not the plastic grocery bags. These are some kind of heavier tote.
These are the ones you purchase. Yeah, the like tote type bags. Yeah.
Well, how do those biodegrade?
I have no idea.
Looking at them, I gotta believe it takes them longer to decompose than the free plastic bags you get.
Yep. So brown paper bag, if you're going to use that in place of regular grocery bags, you got to keep that same brown paper bag for the next 6.2 months and use on every shopping visit. Otherwise, you're not helping the environment. You're actually making a negative impact.
Hope they don't get wet.
Bags.
Like get snow on them or rain
or anything. Yeah. So then we move on to plastic bags, the reusable, more durable ones, you've got to use, if it's a woven one, 7.5 months. So 7.5 months, you've got to use this bag every single grocery trip. You can't forget it. And you will start to have a positive environmental impact after 7.5 months. 6.5 months if it's a non-woven plastic bag. Now, here's where I smile to myself and go, I know so many people that have these cotton bags, and they think that it's good for the environment. So if you have a regular, conventional cotton grocery bag that you're reusing, that's awesome. That's great. I'm glad that you want to help the environment. Just know that you have to take it with you on every single shopping trip for the next 85.3 years. You can't forget it, not once. You have to use it every single time. And then you will start after 85.3 years to have a positive environmental impact. Otherwise, you should have used a plastic bag. I'll leave you guys with this last one before we go to a break. If you switch to organic cotton, 240.4 years is how long you need to use that bag for. Otherwise, you should have just used plastic. So we're going to take a quick break here on Radio Free New York, and we'll be back in a moment.
You're listening to the voice of liberty. WYSL. AM 1040 Avon, Rochester, FM 92.1 Rochester, FM 95.5 Spencerport, and WYSL1040.com everywhere.
At University Eye Specialists, I see many patients who suffer from dry, irritated, or itchy eyes. Sometimes these symptoms are often due to severe dry eye. Over-the-counter eye drops often help, but sometimes dry eye may require treatment with prescription medication. Dry eye is a very treatable medical condition that should be taken very seriously. The health of your eyes is very important to us. Please feel free to call any one of our local offices for an appointment.
In America, we are living longer, healthier lives. The longer we live, the more likely we are to develop eye conditions such as glaucoma, macular degeneration, and diabetic eye disease. If you are over the age of 40, it's important to have a thorough eye examination in order to identify vision-threatening conditions at an early stage. At University Eye, we have the technology and experience to screen for and to treat glaucoma, macular degeneration, and diabetic retinopathy. At University Eye, your vision is our mission.
Phone 1-800-724-0938.
You're listening to Radio Free New York on the WYSL stations.
Welcome back to Radio Free New York. We were just talking about how to actually make a positive impact on the environment versus just randomly banning things and hoping that somehow that'll fix things. So if you missed the first segment of the show, I'll just run through these numbers really quick before we transition to the next thing. If you want to make a positive environmental impact in your grocery shopping and you want to you just decide, I'm not going to use those, what they would call like one-time use grocery bags that they give you at the store, and you're going to switch to some other type of bag. Here's how long you've got to use that bag to actually break even and then start making a positive environmental impact. Paper bag, 6.2 months. Plastic bag, if it's woven, 7.5 months. Plastic bag, if it's not woven, 6.5 months. Cotton bags, conventional, non-organic cotton bag, 85.3 years. And organic cotton bags, 240.4 years. So I would highly, highly recommend avoiding cotton. It is literally a lifetime commitment and the commitment of future generations.
Because you have to leave the bags to your kids and keep it up.
Yep, and hope that these bags don't wear out before then. Otherwise, you haven't helped the environment at all. You've actually made it worse. The UK actually came out with a very similar study that lined up with what Denmark produced. The only difference is they didn't include as many things like what does it take to manufacture and produce this stuff. So their numbers were a little lower, but the results were very similar with the outcome. So how do we fix this without government? I mean, a lot of people seem to be of the mindset that unless government forces this, like the environment's just going to die, and that people aren't responsible enough. Well, I would look at a place like Aldi's. They don't provide bags for free. You bring your own. I was recently in Czech Republic. None of the stores there actually give you bags. There are no bags. If you want,
what do they do? Do they have people just have grocery bags that they reuse?
Yeah. Yep. People actually, it's kind of like ingrained in their society. So we're talking about societal change here. So people either show up with their own bags, or what's really common there, which I think is really cool, most people have their backpack. And that's actually their grocery bag. So they didn't buy a special bag for groceries. They show up and they've got like a backpack on. They go through the store. Nobody's like judging them for having a bag. No security guards like looking like, are you filling your bag with stuff? They show up at the cash register. Backpack comes off, goes there. And as the stuff scans, it just goes right into their backpack. Zip it up, throw it on their back after they pay. Off they go. So they didn't even like do anything special to have a special shopping bag. They use something that they're already using. And an interesting thing over there too is even to-go containers you pay for. So if you're going to leave the restaurant, you want to take the food home with you, you want a styrofoam to-go container.
There's a charge.
It's like $1.50.
Wow,
like
that much?
Yeah,
No kidding.
yeah.
Holy
no,
moly.
absolutely.
Well, it's funny because my very first job at age 14 was I was like the stock kid and the checkout kid and all this other stuff at Hart's Food Market in Livonia, New York. And what we used to do, when we stocked the store, up in the front of the store on top of all the shopping carts, there were stacks of these boxes. And what you would do is you would take the shipping boxes that the food came in, you put groceries in those, and then you carry them out to the car for the customer.
Yep. I think Sam's Club used to do that. They used to have a big bin of boxes there, but they still had plastic bags too, if I remember. I can't remember now. I'm not sure.
Of course, obviously, in 1964, there were no plastic bags. No. You had the paper bags, the familiar paper, kind of squarish. They called them barrel bags. But I was constantly lectured by Bob Durier, the owner of the store, that those things those cost a nickel each.
Oh, yeah. Yep.
So be sparing with them.
Yeah. So those are just a couple ideas. Grocery stores don't necessarily have to give away bags for free, which would be a solution outside of government that people go, oh, well, the grocery store, I had to pay for them, so I can either be more responsible or use a reusable, whatever. I guess my point is government doesn't have to do this for us. We can make the decision. People are starting to. We'll see where it takes us. But what I'm hoping everybody takes away from this is don't ever buy an organic cotton bag. That's number one. And that actually there's unintended consequences for some of this stuff. Government banning these plastic bags will probably be worse for the environment because the people that are going to use these certain bags or like brown paper bags, they're probably not going to know that they have to use it 40 some times to have a good impact. So we'll actually be doing more harm than good. And speaking of unattended bad consequences the government does by legislating stuff, we're going to talk about Ben Wassel here. His court case.
Nice transition.
Yeah. You like that? So let's talk about the New York State SAFE Act. Let's talk about a law that many people rushed into thinking it would make our state safer somehow, without any type of real research, analysis, looking at things. And the result of that was a law that took law-abiding citizens, made them criminals overnight for owning equipment that is perfectly legal in other states. It took our veterans who commit suicide at the rate of 22 veterans a day and literally made them feel like they can't seek help. So it's actually really negatively impacted our veterans, and it's taken just regular people and destroyed their lives. So when we talk about unintended consequences of bad laws, this is a great example. I bring up Ben Wassel because he has a court appeal coming up, And that is going to be on February 28th, 9 o'clock in the morning. It will be located at 50 East Avenue in Rochester. That's 14604 if you need the zip code. And I'm just asking if that's important to you to show up. I will be there personally. I don't know how many seats will be in the courthouse. I don't know how many of us will fit. But I want us to be there and make a statement if that's important to you. Ben's a military veteran. He served multiple tours. He's 90% combat disabled, and he's a husband and a father of 2 kids. So I think this guy should really get our support. He was the first ever person arrested under the SAFE Act. And I don't believe that, you know, a lot of people that I know who think that the SAFE Act is good until we really talk about it, they always think it's kind of like a seat belt or something, like, oh no, it's going to keep us safe. And then when we start talking about what it does, it really just damages lives and makes things safer for criminals, not for law-abiding citizens. So I think that we really need to rally together and really show our elected officials, show the courts that this is important to us, and they got to stop passing just garbage laws that hurt more than they help. So once again, I'll give you guys the date one more time. So that's February 28th, 9 a.m. It's going to be at 50 East Avenue, Rochester, New York. And say you can't make it. Say you can't get off from work. Maybe you would consider donating to his GoFundMe page. I did actually have somebody reach out. I'll pull it up right now. If you want to mail a check, let me pull up that address, because I had a listener email me on Friday saying, hey, I don't do online transactions. I still want to support. How do I do this? And you can. So Ben has said any support, he doesn't want there to be any question about where funds are going. So he said just mail everything straight to his attorney, addressed to his attorney. If you want to mail a check, you can mail it, make it out to James Ostrowski, 63 Newport Avenue, Buffalo, New York, 14216. So once again, that's James Ostrowski, 63 Newport Avenue, Buffalo, New York, 14216. And what he will do is he will make sure that Ben knows who has donated and how much. Unless you want to remain anonymous, just put that in there. And that is a way that you can send a check, if you prefer check, over doing an online donation.
Well, there you go.
There you go. And speaking of the SAFE Act and just bad firearms laws in general in New York, earlier today, and we're going to pull up the audio clip on this, what I've got here is somebody actually reached out to me about this, and I saw it on Twitter and stuff. Somebody saw their neighbor with a firearm and decided that, and this neighbor was in their own home, private, not bothering anybody, from my understanding.
No brandishing, no threatening.
Nothing like that, just in the privacy of their home. I'm not sure if this person looked in their window or maybe their blinds weren't closed, and called the police. And so we've got audio from the police right here as to what their reaction was to this.
At about 6:53 today, officers responded to the area of 300 block of Farmington Road for a neighbor that was concerned about seeing a shotgun at her neighbor's residence. When we arrived on scene, we did take a person of interest into custody. We don't know what charges we have at this point, but at this point, we are checking the residence. Our crisis negotiation team was on scene, as well as our SWAT team, and right now it's still under investigation. We do have some closings of streets during which this occurred. We have Winton Road and Farmington Road that's closed right now. We have Colonial and Winton Road, as well as Colonial and Winnington Road, and Colburn Road and Winnington Road. So as soon as those streets open, I'll be sure to let everyone know so that they can let our viewers know that, you know, it's open.
So was it, when the neighbor said she saw a shotgun, was it outside the house? Or was the person walking around with it? Or?
It was just inside the residence.
So she was over visiting?
No, she could see it from her house.
Was it pointed out at anything?
It's just, it was in the residence and she was able to see it. So we're still trying to investigate what she saw. We're still trying to locate the shotgun in question, So
as far as you guys started off, it was so early in the morning, you started off with just trying to talk to this person?
Yeah, the person was cooperative with us and came out, you know, peacefully. So this point, we hadn't had any incidents to report, no injuries to report. So
he wasn't threatening in any way to anybody or himself.
We're still trying to, figure everything out. But at this point, we have him in custody, and we're going to talk to him.
Great, thanks.
Okay, you're welcome.
So, yeah. That to me, like, I feel violated just knowing that happened. I am just like,
what are they talking about? Why did they take? Well, the thing that occurs to me is somebody got taken into custody. I wonder why that was.
Yeah, and that was strange to me too, because they're like, well, was he threatening anybody? Was he doing anything? Oh, we're still trying to figure that out. We just have him in custody. So, obviously there's stuff that the public doesn't know about this. But what I heard in this statement is that today a neighbor saw a neighbor in the privacy of their own home on their own private property with a perfectly legal firearm that the police can't seem to find, by the way.
Well, wait a minute. They never found any weapon?
Yeah, that's what she said at the end, that we're still trying to figure out where the weapon is and if it was seen. So a neighbor saw what is allegedly a legal weapon in their neighbor's home, in the privacy of their home, with no evidence of anything suspicious or unusual happening. And the response was for half the neighborhood to be shut down, streets shut down, bringing in SWAT, bringing in a crisis negotiator, searching that person's home, because she made it sound like they have now searched through this person's home. They haven't even found a weapon yet.
Well, the thing that occurs to me is maybe what this neighbor noticed or saw through a window was someone about to commit suicide.
Maybe. And that's
the only thing that would explain all this. If the person was taken into custody, of course, attempted suicide is a violation.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I don't know, but it reminds me of an experience I had about 2 or 3 years ago at my home. And I will share that with you guys when we come back from the break about what happened when the police showed up at my house when somebody called about something that clearly never happened. So when we come back here on Radio Free New York, we will talk about that in a moment.
From Avon Feed and Supply, introducing Dry Shod waterproof footwear. Dry, comfortable feet, even on those warmer days. Avon Feed has a big selection of dry shod for men and women, offering fully flexible athletic shoe sizing for great fit and maneuverability. Its exclusive insulation breathes and keeps you warm without bulk, and you'll stay dry top to bottom with state-of-the-art waterproofing. While you're at Avon Feed, find everything for your pet, from feeding bowls to toys, leads, collars, beds, crates, and tie-outs. Avon Feed and Supply has with a big pet chain stores will never have. Tim Cole and his great knowledgeable staff. And if you think you'll save money at that pet superstore, well, think again. While you're at Avon Feed, don't forget the two-legged pets with River Rat Thousand Island cheese in great flavors, including hard-to-find mean and nasty. Plus, once again, nut butters, Nunday mustards, and Rickles pickles. Open a weekday.
Coming back
Saturday, 9 to 4. Avon Feed and Supply. West Main Street at the bottom of the hill, just west of the Circle.
You're listening to Radio Free New York on the WYSL stations.
So we're talking about an interesting situation here that happened in Rochester this morning, I believe it was, where a neighbor called the cops on another neighbor saying that they saw a shotgun. And the response was half the neighborhood got shut down, SWAT showed up. They, so far, unless anything new has come out very recently, they weren't able to find a weapon at all. It's a really, really strange story to me. And I think that unless there's something like Bob and I were talking about this on the break, that maybe the neighbor thought that somebody was going to commit suicide or something like that. That's the only thing that we could think of that would be a potentially logical reason to show up with this much force to take things to this level. We don't know because they're not providing any additional information. But it really reminded me of something that happened to me a few years ago, where I was actually just in the backyard of my house and gardening, and then all of a sudden the police show up, and I didn't even know that the police were there. My dog started barking and making noise, and I was trying to figure out why. I went out front, and I could see there were some cops there at my front door. And a little bit of background on this story, actually, is that my wife is a photographer. So what had happened earlier that day, maybe about an hour before I started doing some chores outside and working on the garden, was I took some of her camera equipment out of my car, brought it into my home. One of those being a tripod. And for whatever reason, a person walking by my home, and I live on a dead end, so I'm not sure what the person was doing there anyways, but a person walking by my home saw me carrying this tripod, or at least this is how I try to explain the story to myself. This is how I think it must have happened. They saw me carrying in the tripod, got really, really creative in their mind, and must have thought it was some assault triple barrel attack shotgun or something. I don't know, because what ended up happening is they called the police and said that there is a man walking into a home with a shotgun. And so the police show up, and my experience was very different. So when the police showed up, like I said, I didn't even know they were there until my dog started barking. I went over and just kind of said, "Oh, can I help you?" And they weren't even on like my porch or anything. They were just kind of standing in front of the stairs, and you could tell they just felt really, really uncomfortable. And they said, "Oh, where are you? We can't see you." I'm like, "Oh, I'm over here." They thought I was in the house. And so I was like, "Well, what's going on?" Now, it wasn't uncommon for me to see officers in my neighborhood because where I live in the city. Break-ins and crime weren't uncommon. Somebody was always had a bicycle stolen, a lawnmower, B&Es, whatever it happened to be. So I was assuming that they were going to let me know that one of the neighbors got broken into. Had I seen anything, that sort of thing. And they said, "Well, we got a call from somebody saying that somebody brought a firearm into this house." And then they immediately, before I could say anything, "Nobody's in trouble. There's nothing illegal about it. This or that." And,
nothing to see here, folks.
Yeah. And I was like, "Oh, I'm well aware of what is and isn't illegal as far as firearms go. But this is kind of strange. Like that, this has never happened." They're like, "Yeah, it's firearm related, so we have to show up. We don't really want to waste or bother your time." And I was like, it was strange to me, and I didn't know why or what. And I was like, "Well, when did the call come in?" Trying to figure it out, and eventually connected the dots. I'm like, "Oh, I carried a tripod into the house." And somebody took that as a firearm and called the police, which really, so looking at how that situation was handled and then this one today really kind of has me thinking about how society and culture has made people so afraid of firearm ownership, so afraid, like you see somebody with a firearm and you feel like you have to call the police. Now, once again, I don't know the situation with this person this morning. I don't know what that neighbor saw. At what the surface of the story is, it sounds ludicrous to me that somebody would call the police just because they saw a neighbor with a shotgun.
Yeah, and on top of that, somebody was taken into custody.
Exactly. Yeah. So,
and that there's a search underway. I mean, obviously we don't know enough about the story.
Yeah, we don't. But then, as I'm reminded about a few years ago, somebody who didn't know me, didn't belong in my neighborhood, because I know all my neighbors. If they wouldn't be worried about the tripod. I'm a hunter. I go in and out of my house all the time, sometimes carrying, a firearm in a case or something. So that wouldn't have freaked out my neighbors. So somebody who didn't know my neighborhood, wasn't a part of my neighborhood, my local community, saw me walking in with a piece of photography equipment and felt the need to call the police. It just makes me really upset with the way that society has gone, and I feel that people are just becoming afraid of things that are really unnecessary.
It does seem over the top, doesn't it?
It does.
I mean, at least, and by the way, I mean, we're not trying to diminish the seriousness of this whatever happened in Farmington today, but there are ample examples of crazy overreactions to firearms of any sort.
Yeah. And also, I'd like to kind of think that the reason that guy called the police that day when he saw me with a tripod was that he did it not out of malice or anything like that, because I don't know who this guy is, but instead because he was probably like afraid and concerned.
Yeah, people are being conditioned by pop culture.
Yep. And that's why I think the concerning thing is, like, it's good that he was concerned and wanted to do something about it, because there's a lot of people in the area that they could watch the house being broken into. They wouldn't bother picking up the phone, which is a totally different issue. So this guy was concerned enough to pick up the phone, but the fact that that's what his concern was and that was what his fear was really just shows how the culture in our state, because other states, like if you go down to Pennsylvania, they have open carry. And when I went down to Pennsylvania to go to visit a few people, I was like, oh, I'll go to the gun shop. And I went in this town, like almost everybody was open carrying there, not just in the gun shop, like the grocery store, the cashiers were open carrying, you know.
And ladies and gentlemen, that's why Pennsylvania is, as you see in every news report on the evening news every day, day after day, Pennsylvania is a killing field.
Oh yeah. I mean, it's just
you step over that border. I mean, it's bodies everywhere.
Yep, absolutely. So, and that's the point is, like, look at Rochester, look at our major cities here in New York, look at New York City, look at our crime rates, look at our violent crime rates, and look at places like Chicago. You know, we have essentially made people afraid of a piece of equipment that could be used to save your life, defend your family. We've made people fear it so much that they're now reporting on people when they see it because they're so afraid. Yet we have so much crime because the citizens are now afraid to defend themselves. And I want to tie this into, just in the end of the show here, the idea that Cuomo is pushing red flag laws right now. And he's basically, at this point, as I'm seeing what's happening here in New York, it's almost not even necessary, because your neighbor sees you or somebody walking down the street sees you, and the cops might show up at your door anyways, and you have done nothing wrong, nothing illegal. But now we're talking about having teachers in schools report on people just based on a gut feeling, I guess, a feeling that, oh, maybe there's a risk here. Just in case, let's make sure we confiscate this person's firearms. It's a really, really scary direction that we're going in. And I think that we need to find a way to educate people and really bring to light that firearms themselves aren't dangerous. And this is something I've known my whole life. If you guys listen to any other like Second Amendment show or firearms trainer, the firearm's just a piece of machinery. It's no different than a car, a can opener,
a claw hammer,
a steak knife for dinner. It's a tool. It's a piece of machinery. And the safety of it is 100% controlled by the person who's operating it. And that's what we really need to go back to. Kids used to bring rifles to schools, and we didn't have school shootings.
I was right there with it. It happened routinely. Not only were there no shootings, there were no accidental discharges, because the kids were educated into the safe use of firearms.
Yeah, no, and that's something that's totally lost, and I always can tell the difference between friends who have educated their kids on firearms versus those that don't, because their kids will have like muzzle awareness with a Nerf gun or something like that. Like they'll be very, very prudent to it. And I remember growing up, my father, we hunted in our home. We had firearms in our home. They were always locked away. And my father, even with like toy guns, was always like, you can never point this at a person. Why? It's a toy. Because it's a bad habit. That's like bad training. That's not safe. What if you ended up with a firearm and you just thought you had a toy, or you thought it was unloaded? So I say all this to say I found out that New York State actually has firearm safety funding for schools, for public schools.
Imagine that.
Yeah, I had no idea. So I did just a little bit of research on this, not enough, but it appears that we actually have the opportunity to use money provided by the state as a part of an educational budget to actually have firearm training in schools. But basically all the schools just never take advantage of it. So that money sits there.
Politically incorrect.
Yep. Yep. So there are some schools that now have, I've seen some like air rifle clubs. I think there's one or two that have a skeet shooting club now in New York. And I think that this is just something we need to raise awareness about. Talk to your school board and say, yeah, why aren't children learning about this thing? Everybody thinks it's so dangerous, right? Why aren't we educating people and making sure that they understand if they did come across a firearm, if they did happen to find one, how to be safe? What do you do instead of what has happened before?
Going abject panic.
Yep. Tons of panic. A kid is curious, maybe picks it up, maybe plays with it, maybe thinks it's fake. They've had no training. How could we expect them to be any different? So I know this is kind of a long ramble, I think, but I thought it was important to go over and talk about and really see what we can do to improve this in our local communities.
Well, and another thing that we can do is we can start doing away with these gun-free zones, because I think that contributes to the public enmity towards firearms.
Yeah, it makes them scared. It totally does. So thank you guys so much for joining us here on Radio Free New York. I will be back with you guys on Friday.
Thanks for listening to Radio Free New York on the WISL stations.
Shopping for a